Tricia Duffin. I am the Director of Customer Success here at Gavel. Started my work as a legal secretary many moons ago as it helped different law firms, mostly family law, integrate different software into their platform, and also helped answer all their, client questions. So as I was growing into their law firm, I started working with a lot of different software platforms, including Gavel. And with that, I was able to build my own LLC during COVID, where I helped other attorneys just like yourself build automation systems. We were noticing in our Gavel platform, as we were meeting with a lot of our customers, that a lot of you are also just interested in understanding more about automation in general and how you can use different software platforms within your firm. So we wanted to give these workshops to help guide you guys through the process of setting up automation, learning what automation you actually need, things like that. So if you missed part one, we do have a link that we can share as well in the chat that will take you to that landing page. It has the recording there and the worksheet from that workshop. So you could definitely go back and revisit. You'll also get this recording to watch later and a worksheet there as well. If you want to download that worksheet, that would be great. And I'm going to kind of start with our agenda. Okay. So what we're going to go through is a brief overview of what I covered last month in the first workshop. Then we're going to go on to how to move forward past creating your roadmap. And we're going to focus in on what kind of actions need to happen so that you know what type of platforms you need to automate with. And then we're going to talk about how you get them all set up to communicate together. And then next session is going to go into a deep dive about integrations and actually connecting these platforms and how to really start working and building the platforms together so that they will communicate effectively. So I'm super excited for the next one. We'll have registration for that also. That will be at the end of this slideshow. So I'm super excited to get started. We're going to talk a little bit about previously on identifying your document automation goals. So last month we talked a lot about your current process, what actually your team does to onboard a client and get them through the process from first contact to final judgment or the ending of your agreement together. We're talking a little bit more about how in depth you need to get within your team to figure out how people use your road that you have today. Everybody has different setups. It's important to listen to your team, to gather that information, and to see how you are currently working today so that you can learn how you want to grow into a more automated system later. The second part we talked about is preparing templates. And this is just a little bit more of a housekeeping, especially when we're talking about document automation in particular, is that how do we set up our templates to get the most out of them when we're ready to start the automation process? So while you're data gathering about how your team uses how your clients in your team go through a caseload today, we also want to talk about your templates and preparing them for the next step of automation. And then lastly, we did a roadmap where in the worksheet, you were to put in the different phases of your processes within your firm. So be that if it is going to be an introduction phase, a data gathering phase, a decision phase as an estate planning, or if it is like phase one is client information, phase two is motion documents, and phase three is final judgment. You would have your different phases set out in your roadmap. I cover all of this in part one, so definitely recommend watching that if you haven't watched it yet. So now we're going to talk about what to do now that you have your roadmap. So we have our roadmap, we have what our ideal process for any of the clients that are coming to us as a firm, what we want their experience to be. We're going to look now by finding out mile markers and different pivot points or points of action that happen within the process so that we can make sure that we have all of the actions ready and available and we're aware of anything that might come up. So in this process, we're going to look for mile markers, find those different pivot points, and make sure we have all the mile markers we need. So I'm going to show you this example. This is from our last workshop. This is my 3 phases that I have of my ideal roadmap. What I'd love to do is have clients contact my office and I send them a questionnaire and then they fill out their basic information. This information is then put into our CRM and creates a client matter and a client contact card. This also generates a fee and retainer agreement. My next phase is that they've hired us, so they signed it. They've paid the money that you want, the down payment or your flat fee or whatever you have set up for your fee and retainer agreement. And then we send them a second questionnaire. This goes more into gathering beneficiaries, heirs, charities, business, who I want to be in the will and trust, or who that client wants to be in their will and trust. And what this does is it generates a summary of information that gets sent back to our team so that we can then review it. They also want to schedule a time to meet us in person in their office so we can go over the summary of information and start making those decisions. That's the third step, the decision phase. So now they come to our office, we discuss further, we actually make choices on who's going to be executor, guardian, who's going to run the healthcare directive, etc. This generates a full set of documents that they can be reviewed and signed by client and the attorney. So this is my example phase for an estate planning attorney, just a very basic 3-step phase. Now that we have this ideal roadmap, I'm going to start looking at mile markers. So we're going to start with mile marker 1. This is initial contact, and I'm going to focus mostly on this introduction phase here. So the client contacts the office. This is the first initial contact. Who is doing it is the client. How they're doing it is via phone or email, and what they're asking for is an inquiry of services. So we have a step here that's a pivot point, first introductions. What happens next is we will send them a questionnaire to get further, more in-depth information, a little bit more about if they're married or not, just basic, information. What we really want to do is get enough information to create a fee and agreement letter and to fill in a matter and a contact card. So this is going to be an email response we give back to them with a link to our data gathering tool, or if you're lucky, a data gathering and document automation like Gavel. So that would be the tool that you could use to have gathering that data from the client. My third mile marker is going to be inputting that data into our client management system. So if I'm inputting this data into our client management system, that will then into our data gathering tool, I want it to automatically input that. I don't want to re-enter that information into that client management system. I would like it automatically to do that. So what I need to do is create an integration from that data gathering tool to a client management system. That's important to me because that saves time, right? We want it to be automatic. The next mile marker is document generation. So we want also that data that we're gathering to create that fee and retainer agreement. This also ideally will be automatic with our document automation tool. So there I go. I have my introduction phase. I figured out my 4 mile markers, but wait, where do the documents go? It generates it, but does the client receive it? Do we want it to go somewhere else? Do we have an idea of what happens with that agreement and where it goes? So this is important. As you're going through these mile markers, you're going to find gaps in where you need to create actions and pivots. So this is important to go through the process so you can find all of these before running into them later, right? So now we're going to go ahead and have a mile marker 5. Where do we put these documents? We want it to be automatic as well, hopefully within our data gathering tool / document automation tool so that they can email it to our office. This is exactly how Gavel works so that you can take that information, put it into a document, and have the documents emailed as well. So this is just the introduction phase and how we're starting to create mile markers to really designate what needs to happen at each phase. You're going to do this so on and so forth for all the different phases of your roadmap. And the reason that this is really important, because this is going to give you an idea, not only of what tools you need, because obviously that's very important, but it's also going to indicate what type of order you want to start your processes so that you can start building your client management system so it's prepared and ready for the integration with your document automation tool. So deciding those things and deciding what you need is going to be the next step. All right, I covered a lot of ground there. Let's go ahead and look at the chat, see if we had any questions here that you guys had. Maddie, if you have any that you want to call out, that would be great too.
We have a question from Edward. What software other than Gavel do you need to follow through with what you have just described, the mile markers?
Edward, you were already thinking ahead, aren't you? So that's wonderful. That's going to be part of part two. We're going to talk about all the different software platforms that are out there and just other kind of legal tech things that you could use to integrate with things within Gavel and also within the other platforms as well. So I'll go over that soon. Are there any other questions? Feel free to unmute and ask a question if you'd like as well. Okay. All right. Well, then I guess we are just ready and eager to know. Let's talk about the legal tech unicorn, the mythical, legendary unicorn. We want one thing to rule everything. And I get that. I get that energy that you're like, I want a client and management matter system. I want a billing and account assessment system, a data document automation system, marketing. I want task management. I want process and procedures. I want all of these systems. And why can't I have it all in one? The truth is out there that there are some platforms that do allow you to do a lot of these things in one. But I will ask you if it allows you to do everything well. And that's one of the processes we kind of talk about in Gavel is our platform is built for document automation and data gathering. That is what we've been built for and what we are known for. A lot of these other systems that are trying to house too many things at once started with a very strong platform and have added on subsidiary add-ons to cover some of these other systems, but maybe don't do it as well as an actual system that's made to do that activity. So that action. So I think, when you're thinking about the different legal texts that you really need, I think it's about also learning about what's really important and what saves you the most time. And thinking about, am I creating contact cards and matter cards? Am I creating documents? Is that part of it? Finding documents? What are the different parts of it that are taking too long? Do I have a good communication system with my clients so that I can market and communicate to them later? Do I have a good onboarding system for my team so that when I do have turnaround with paralegals or assistants, or we have a bunch of L4 interns who are coming in and coming through, do we have a process and procedure system that allows us to have that be a quicker onboarding? These are the kind of things you need to think about when you think about automating your firm, is also thinking about what tools can actually help you do things faster and better, and which tools are the best at what they do. So we're going to talk a little bit about different technologies. Client and matter management systems, there's tons of them out there. And we have your big heavy hitters that are, kind of our Clio. You can think about like net documents, things that are, they're all in one kind of type of, stopping, stop page. But, one of the things that they do really well, client matter and billing. Those are top two, I think, of their best use cases. When you think about, client matter management system, it depends on your firm, right? We have solo and small firms who don't need all the bells and whistles that are in Clio, and maybe something like Trello or Airtable are enough for them to be able to see all their clients' information and manage a case to make sure it goes through all the different steps it needs to go through. So it really does depend a little bit on your firm size. It depends on what your firm's, scope is and what you're looking to grow into. I will say, when it comes to billing and accounting accounting system, Clio is probably my favorite. When I was working with Clio, back when I was a software integrator, sorry, when I was a software integrator, there was a lot of people that I helped build out with Clio because their billing system is really robust. But you can also use things like TimeSolve, QuickBooks Online. You can even do things like Toggle. If you're doing flat rate fees or things like that, then that's a much easier interface than if you're doing a billable hour. So a lot of those things will take into account on which one will be important for you. Data and document automation, obviously, Gavel's the best. We are focused in on that. We are definitely user-friendly. I do think that there are a lot of other platforms that are out there that do serve their purposes in other ways. But obviously, being this is a Gavel sponsored, we definitely need to do a lot more, especially with integrating, with being able to connect, with being able to move data around, and to have a much more customizable interface that can meet your customers where they're at or your team where they're at. That helps a lot with onboarding as well. Marketing and communication systems. We can think about HubSpot, Constant Contact. I know that there are other systems that have these types of things, but you can also do something like Survey Monkeys, or if you wanted to go to a little bit more of a low key kind of like marketing and communication outlet as well. Task management is sometimes something that our firms look for just because they are trying to keep all the different, case managements together, especially if you don't use something like Clio as a client management system. You may want to have another task management system because it just keeps people on task. So Trello, Monday, Asana, things like that, that just help give a little bit more oomph because Clio can be um, a little bit less comprehensive on task management and putting tasks into calendars. So I do find that if I use Asana or Trello, I'm able to actually create tasks within my own calendar systems that help me keep aligned on what I need to get done. Process and procedures. A lot of this also is if you are a bigger firm, this probably comes into a little bit more of, your needs. But what this allows you to do is create a set of processes or a documentation of your firm and the practices. It helps with onboarding. It helps with people getting used to your systems and understanding like quickly how to integrate themselves into your firm. So these are also technologies that are used. A lot of these are on Zapier, and Zapier is going to be something I'm going to cover in our third workshop and talk more in depth about integrations and how they work together with automation or with your different automation software platforms. So we'll talk a little bit more on the third, so sign up for it and register. But all of these are somewhat linkable. Some play well with others and some don't. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to figure out if they play well or not with each other. So with these different legal technologies, let's think about your roadmap. We're now thinking back to your roadmap. We're thinking about how you want to move your clients through the ideal system. You have your mile markers and you're thinking about how I want them to experience. So we're going to start building a unicorn because we're going to build our own unicorn using Gavel and Clio. Those are going to be the two examples. This example I'm going to use for just this introductory phase, that one phase that we talked about. So we know mile marker 1, initial contact, your phone and email. So we need a phone and email system. Most of us have that either within our firm, but we also have 2, our data gathering tool. So that would be something like Gavel, where you'd be able to gather data from there. We also have a client management tool we're looking for. So that's a client management like a Clio. Document automation, again, that's something that Gavel covers as well. And then email integration, which is also a part of our platform. So these are the 5 big things that we're looking for. And we want to start thinking about how they're going to interact and in what order they're going to interact. So let's look at the Clio interaction. So the first mile marker we're going to start with is creating matter and contact card in Clio from that initial contact. So the initial contact comes in, the client has reached out to our firm, the secretary or assistant is going to receive the call or the email, have their email, and their full name, and with that information will create a matter and contact card for a potential client. And this is going to be something that is a manual process, but will allow them to be able to create those cards that we can input data into later. So it's important that we start with creating a matter and creating those contact cards so we have a place to put the data we're gathering once we get it. Then we're going to talk about the next section, which is mile marker 2, where we're going to start working with Gavel. This is where we're going to send that shareable link to our client for client information. This is a workflow to the new client. It gathers all the information about who is in their life. It talks about, their end of life wishes, just certain things. It's getting some basic information to get a summary of their case. This is going to also end with an embedded calendar link that says, hey, let's book your next time. We have all this information. Now we need to discuss this together. You can embed that calendar link, that calendar right into the end of the Gavel workflow so that their next step would be, let's make a date to meet. So they would schedule that. Also, mile marker 3, we're going to use Zapier, which again, I'm going to talk about in our next session, to push data from Gavel back into Clio. This will complete the matter information and the matter card and any contact card that you need to input to. After we're done with, as well with that, we are, if you remember in the background here with mile marker 4, we are creating a document at the end. This document is going to be our fee and retainer agreement at this point. Yes. So this is going to give us a little bit more information, or give us the fee agreement and everything we need there. And then that is going to be sent via Gavel as well to the office manager for the next steps. So utilizing these two together in tandem is going to be how we're going to finalize this introduction phase. We're going to do the same for all the different phases and think about the different interactions. We may need to add more mile markers if we decide, okay, I don't just want this data to go to Clio. I also would like it to go to my constant contact. Or you may need to add another Zapier link to be like, okay, I also want to set up a task in Asana for my office manager to follow up with this person in a week if she hasn't finished this workflow. These are the types of integrations we can connect to say, okay, this thing has been completed and they didn't schedule an appointment. Let's go next. And you can create the different automations through Zapier to connect all the different things from the process where you're not using your time, you're not using your secretary's time, you're not using your assistant's time to create said things, right? We're trying to save time. So this is what I would do, is kind of go through the different interactions and really think about, is there anything else that I would like to add in here? Then I'd add those mile markers and then I'd add those interactions. So I could say, okay, what else am I interacting with? In this example, I have two interactions that I'm using for this example. In your worksheet, you'll have 3. Again, this is limitless. The worksheet is just kind of a base for you to push off of, but you can have as many different phases on your roadmap, and you can have as many mile markers as you need, and you have as many interactions as you need. Again, a lot of this is as simple or complex as you want it to be. Okay. Any questions right now? Pull up the chat real quick.
We don't have anything that you didn't already answer, I don't think.
Oh my goodness. Well, I must be really good at this. Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and move forward to all aboard. Let's talk a little bit now that we have this. We need to start getting our kind of puzzle pieces together, the people and the right cars on the road here, and make sure that we're all on the same map. So we're going to talk about gathering our software platforms. We already know which ones we want to integrate with and what we want to have working for our automation process. But we also want to talk about like finding the right support teams and then how I even just get started. So now we're going to talk about connecting the dots, finding your road crew, and opening the highway. So let's connect the dots. The first thing we're going to try to do is reach out to all of the different platforms, right? So you have your chosen platforms that you're using. You want to have questions about native integrations. So that term, native integrations, means it's a built-in integration. As an example, Clio can go send data to Gavel. So as Gavel, we can pull data from your contact cards and your Matter card to be able to pull in all the data that you have on the Matter and your Clio contact cards. This data will then be usable in your documents that you output. That's a native integration, meaning if you have a Clio account and you have a Gavel account, we can push that data into Gavel. However, Clio does not have we do not have an integration, direct integration, native integration, sorry, into Clio back into Clio. That's why we have to use Zapier. And this is because certain companies play well in certain ways. So you do need to ask certain questions from your different software platforms about native integrations. That's really important to look up and see who they play well with, because that might also indicate who you want to work with. And also ask if they have APIs. APIs are going to be a way for you to connect other platforms that might not be on Zapier, but also that can connect. If they can say, oh, we do APIs, we have APIs, they are accessible to you, that means they play well and that you can actually work with them in Zapier or something like Make, which is just like Zapier, just a little bit different of a format. But those different types of website connecting tools, software connecting tools. So asking about their API, asking about native integrations, and then asking about limitations. So that's a big important question. I recommend reaching out to their teams. As a support team, director of our support team here, it's important that you reach out and communicate what your ideal situation is to make sure ahead of time that it will fit the needs that you have. It's important to also get demos to have that type of interaction with these different platforms, because that's going to give you that knowledge to understand, does this work or not, before getting too in the weeds with that platform. Our team's always available, but we work well with other platforms. Clio is also something that you can set up times with. And we also do have Gavel experts as an example that are well versed in a lot of different platforms, such as I was, that you can work with them to build these integrations for you. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed right now and you're like, this is a lot of API and native, and I don't know what that means. That's fine. We do have some experts that can help you with that as well. So it's just important to kind of see what all of the support is available and make sure that there are a platform that you really want to work with. Next, we're going to talk about finding your road crew, and that's going to be part of this, right? So we're going to talk about your support and talk about the people, experts, people that can help you build things. We know as attorneys, you have your degree, your work that you have done, all those years of law school did not include a marketing degree, a IT tech degree, all the different jobs, that business degree, accounting degree, all of these different jobs that you were asked to do, especially if you were a solo or a small firm, right? This is like you're taking on all the jobs that are out there. Find people that can help you get things done. Your time is very valuable, so utilizing different experts, help that you can get from different platforms. If their support team is robust enough to be able to support helping you as well, that's going to really give you the foundation you need to do the work you want. A lot of the things that we're talking about here is on you, though. We need to do the big brain theory is your job to do, because that is your business, right? So that is your firm. This is your, practice. You want to know, I want to have control over that. But once you've made the decision, I want these integrations and I want this to work this way, you can hand this off to somebody to be like, I have a roadmap and these are what needs to be integrated. And then they will have a better opportunity to give you exactly what you're looking for. So doing a lot of this like internal work here first and then handing that to an expert is an excellent idea. Perhaps you have somebody on your team that is already tech savvy, who has kind of an interest in this. It might be worth getting them on board as soon as possible in this process. So if you have somebody on your team that is kind of like, you're like, okay, I see that they've built out our Clio without even like thinking about it. I'd really love them to start doing this stuff. Get them on board early. They should be a part of this process, probably from the start with building out your roadmap, because they probably know more about what their client experience is from the start to the finish. Get them on early, get them a part of it, because then they'll also have buy-in, because this is also part of it. You can build an amazing tech stack and a tech unicorn, but if your team doesn't have buy-in, it's just going to not be used. And that's not going to be worth the effort and the money that you're doing on this. So getting your team to connect to the support teams through trainings, through any types of like workshops you can do with each other, or have them getting involved in the platform. It gives them that early access, that gives them buy-in, but also gets them to not make the transition as rough. It'll feel a little bit more smooth the sooner you get your team aboard. Now we're going to talk about opening the highway, right? So this is going to be the part where we're going to really discuss about how we're going to actually build these things out. This is our time to get to work. This is going to be covered more in my next session, but we're going to go ahead and work at those mile markers. We're going to decide. Your homework is really about making those mile markers and deciding your integration tools, figuring out if they actually work together, and make sure you have that plan. This next step is going to really be about how to get them to work. So in our next session, we're going to talk a little bit more about integrations, if they're not native, how to use things like Zapier. But things to think about ahead of time is that you're going to want to test all of these connections at every mile marker. You're going to want to make sure at every mile marker, everything is clicking and working the way that you ideally see it. You also want to troubleshoot for every variation of possible use. Don't take your client's tech level for granted. I think this is also something to think about as well. Knowing your client base, knowing what they're going to do and how they want to interact with you is going to be extremely important, but also your team. So knowing your team's tech level, understanding what they can do or not do is going to be important as well. But we want to troubleshoot at each of these moments to make sure that it is still user friendly, that it is still working the way that you want, and then it actually outputs with better time saved in the long run. And then when you are ready to kind of test this out, try to find some friendly customers first, because there's always going to be a little bit of a hiccup. There might be something that needs to be redundantly input in. Technology kind of works at the more you use it. So that is also something to think in mind. If you have a surly customer and you can tell that they're coming in, you might not want to be that first test of your new platform. So kind of keep that in mind as you're thinking about opening the highway. We do suggest robust testing on your outputs so that you feel confident. We want to make sure that every part of your process comes with a confident output. So I do recommend thorough testing before you bring this to a beta tester or to a live audience. So that was kind of a brief overview of what the next steps are. And then we're going to go into part 3. Are there any top level questions right now about this?
No, I don't think so. We don't see anything.
All right. So now we're going to just kind of talk about what's next. All right. So thank you guys so much. I know this is a little bit shorter of a workshop than our first one, but I do have a lot of homework there for you. Keep in mind, use that worksheet that I've provided, create transplant your roadmap onto that sheet, and then go ahead and use the mile marker system to set up the ideal setup that you'd like to have and what those different pivot points are. Think about which tech platforms are really important to you, and then you can add those as well. Our next workshop is going to be executing your document automation strategy. So this is going to really go into the little bit more of the weeds of everything. Now that you've decided what the roadmap is going to be, you decided what platforms need to be included. We'll talk more about that as well. Does somebody have a question out there?
Yes.
Yes,
Go
I
ahead.
have I have a question. I just Googled the case management system we use. It's called Basecamp. It's a non-legal um, uh, system that we use and have used for many years. It says that it has an API and it integrates, but it does not mention that it integrates with Gavel. How do we solve that issue?
So I'm not 100% sure if they integrate through Zapier. So that's going to be something we'll cover in the next workshop as well. But you can always go to zapier.com and you will have a list of different platforms that you can search. And you can put in Basecamp and then it'll put okay, and then put Gavel in, and then it'll see if those two integrate.
Yeah,
you can do that.
I think the two of them do integrate. So I've looked at that a year or so ago. My question is, if it integrates with Zapier, does that mean we can have it integrate with um, Gavel?
I would say 99% of the time, yes. There are some outliers that do not integrate. We integrate with over 15,000 different apps on Zapier, so I don't have it offhand right now. But if you search through the Zapier site, I'm almost sure that it will.
Okay, in the next workshop, are you going to tell us then how to use that API and connect it through Zapier? Is that what you're going to cover?
Yeah, so as you can see here, we're going to talk about integration stations, and that's going to be exactly what you're talking about, how to create those little integrated parts through Zapier. We'll have an example there as well from the Clio, from Gavel back to Clio as the example, since we're kind of moving with the same example here, but that will still be the same type of integration you would utilize with Basecamp.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Edward. Do we have another question?
Yeah, general question, is part 1 of this video series in a link somewhere, or would we have to email it to someone?
There is a link. Today might have that as well, handy right off the bat there. But we will try to put that in the chat. Maybe we can also connect it with a follow-up to this.
Oh, Danae's got it. Okay, thank you.
Oh, there it is. Okay. And I think she just put it in the first workshop replay.
We also had someone ask if we have any existing Gavel customers who've already built out or are currently building their unicorn. And Danae mentioned DOS docs in the chat, but I wonder if you want to elaborate on that and give any examples.
Yeah, so we have a lot of different platforms. I would say probably, I mean, I'm guesstimating here, but I would say 70% of our customers utilize some type of integration within their Gavel platform because of how open and friendly we are with working with other platforms. So it does make it very easy to work with others. One of the big ones right now that we have a lot of another workshop on is with Decision Vault, which is another hub space of gathering data that you could utilize. We have a lot of videos of people that are utilizing Clio as an integration as well. Something like DOS Docs, they do a lot of integrations with their own different tools and different platforms. We also integrate with intranets. So if you are a larger firm and have your own systems, we can integrate that way at our scale tier. So we have people that utilize us almost as a background component as well. They may gather data from their own form data gathering site, push that data to our site, but because our document automation is so robust and comparably to other document automation sites, they utilize our document automation to output that document back to their own chosen platform. And that is something that people are currently currently use it that way as well. One of the benefits of Gavel in particular is that we are so open to all the custom uses. If you dream it, we can probably do it. And that's one of the ideas, is that you can make it as simple or as complex. We do have tons of people who use this without ever doing one integration. They just automate internally or from external to internal, and they utilize this as well. Trying to think of some other case studies that we have out there that we can also share with you guys. There are a lot of people that utilize us with different platforms.
Great.
All right.
I don't see any others in this chat.
Okay. Sounds good. So just going over what we're going to cover next, just to kind of get you guys excited and wet your whistles. We are going to talk about integration stations. So we're going to talk more about that and Zapier's, but we're also going to go into like testing and rerouting when things don't go exactly as you need it to go. So a little bit of troubleshooting tips, a little bit of helping you guys react to changes that may come. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the sky's the limit. We kind of covered that a little bit at the end here, but there are a lot of ways for you to integrate. I don't want this to feel as if you have to do all of this either. If you have a very short, roadmap for your specific use case and you don't have a ton of integrations, you'll still find this workshop valuable, because we're going to talk a lot about how to just troubleshoot your Gavel, troubleshoot your platforms, and use that over and over again so that you can actually have the best output that you want for your system. But we're talking mostly about automation as a general form, because we want you guys to feel comfortable that all of this software is usable and all of the software is integratable and workable together. So you can start small and grow big. It really is up to you guys. It's very exciting times to be in legal tech. And so definitely, if you have any further questions, please reach out to help@gavel.io. I look forward to seeing you all there. We do have free trials that you can just start if you are not a Gavel user. It's really fun. You can also book a demo with our team. We're awesome. A lot of fun to hang out with. And then we also have our registration link here.